money than the Congress lady. We also know that on the Appropriations Committee, which is 60 people, that she ranks 45th in terms of bringing money back to our district.
All right, 30-second rebuttal.
You know, I think it's important for everyone to understand that she wants to stop at 8 Mile Road. And I say she, I don't mean to be disrespectful to the Congresswoman. But let's understand that the cost for a regional mass transit system is $10 billion. Not $100 million, not $400 million, and it's not going to... many jobs are in the suburban communities. It is modern-day discrimination when 1/3 of Detroiters do not have access to a car and cannot get to the jobs. A regional mass transit system is the answer, not one that stops at 8 Mile Road.
30-second rebuttal.
Yes, thank you very much. As an appropriator, I've brought in over $1 billion to this country. I know this gentleman says $1 billion is nothing. They won't even speak to him if he gets there as a freshman. I've brought dollars to this city. Mr. Broad talks about appropriations, 60 members. I'm dead in the middle of that. There is no freshman in the 435 body, let alone 13, who've brought in the dollars to their district if I was brought into mine. I don't know where the stats come from. Please check that out. My record is clear. I stand to you as one of the major appropriators on that committee, have brought in many millions of dollars.
Thank you.
I'm not sure where the stats come from.
Mr. Hill.
Common sense. These people in Washington read about what's going on in Detroit. And would you want to give Kwame's mother money to bring home? If I...
All right. Let's be respectful. Let's be respectful on both sides, please.
She's the one that used the term y'all's boy. If I use that term, I'd be considered a racist. Well, as soon as she said y'all's boy, he's fair game.
Can you make your point or you're done? Okay, Mr. Broad, please.
I just wanted to repeat again.
Can you speak up into the microphone, please?
I just want to repeat again that there are 13 freshman Congress people who have brought back more money to their district than the Congress lady has. I would like to be the 14th.
Next up, Mr. Lloyd Jackson, fire away.
Man, oh man. All right, I want to piggyback a little bit on what Rochelle talked about when it comes to education, and we all know that DPS has some issues. And everyone doesn't make it out of DPS, but those who do make it out of DPS, who graduate, and all of them don't necessarily come out with a scholarship. So the ones who come out, they still want to go on to higher education. What will you do as a congressman or woman to make it more affordable for these young people to be able to go to college, number one? And number two, while we're talking about it, what is your stance on whether or not there should be mayoral control of the DPS? And if not, should it just be status quo?
I appreciate the question. Thank you. I think that, first of all, we need to have some alternatives to education. There are some children that just don't learn the same way in a classroom. There are other children that learn by a much more intimate setting. I think we need to be a little bit broader in our alternative perspective to education. You cannot always expect 30 or 40 children in one classroom to learn the same way. It just doesn't happen. And so what I would bring is some new alternative thinking, such as, the idea of parents who have sent their children to boarding schools over the years. That's not been an option for urban communities. And I think that's something that we should look at. It's a voluntary situation that has proven to deliver good quality students. In terms of what I would do to bring in dollars, it would be obvious. I have a stop.
All right.
All right, what I would like to do is initiate a liquor license buyback program. with this. The city could take the liquor licenses, sell the liquor themselves, use the revenue to pay for post-secondary education for the citizens of Detroit.
Status quo is not acceptable. I believe the citizens of Detroit should vote whether they want a mayor takeover or half and half or whatever hybrid they should come up with. I think it should be something that the people of the city should decide for the people of the city school district. What I've been doing is trying to do the best I can to provide the leadership, first of all, the voice, and those state schools are a state responsibility until we equalize the funding. You see, our school system is not competing with Indiana, Ohio anymore. It's China, it's India, it's Russia, it's India. So we have to be more creative about how we finance it, how we train our teachers, and how we make our children 21st century ready. Do we need a change? Absolutely. Should we all be involved in that change? Yes, we should. Let your voices be heard as well.
Mr. Hume.
The idea of a mayor taking over the school system. A while ago, we had a mayor that now he's in jail. That's the kind of... Right now, we have a mayor everybody seems to be happy with. But he's... the thing about the mayor's got a full plate. He's got enough to do without running a school system. The people that really care about the children are the parents. You've got to let the parents decide where their kids go to school. That's why the voucher system will work. And the only reason we won't have a voucher system is because the school unions, the teacher unions, is so powerful. So that's our problem, and that's something we just have to override.
Mr. Broad.
I believe the community has to make the decision in terms of how they want to govern the Detroit public schools. The teachers have told me several times that when kids getting out of school in the middle of May, that when they come back to school in September, that it takes them a full 2 months to get them back to the level that they were when they left. That's not a productive use of our resources, and I think that we need to find ways that we can go to a longer school year and not have the great gap that we now have for kids all summer long. We cannot afford to take 2 months to make up for what they forgot during the summer.
All right. Mr. Plummer, I'm not quite sure if you answered the question about whether or not you support a mayoral takeover or not.
I agree both with Mr. Broad and Ms. Kilpatrick that I think that the residents really ultimately should make that decision. But I will say this, that the Congresswoman has been in Congress for 14 years and has had opportunity to present legislation on this issue of education for years and years. And of the 32 bills that she has personally authored, 30 of them were not even co-sponsored. And the only one that she took from her author all the way to a law was Combination for Howard University, which was good, but we're lacking in terms of legislative representation there that is a leadership position as opposed to being a follower.
All right. Mr. Brown, you never answered whether or not you support a mayoral.
I think it should be in the hands of the voter, absolutely.
All right.
I'd like to rebut just a moment. It's very important that Michigan delegation will work together on many things, 15 of us. I lead that. I'm a leader in that. We work together and solve many things together. The auto industry, we saved it in a bipartisan way. Our leadership, working with our colleagues. Many didn't vote for it, and it passed just slimly. The casinos, they wanted to build casinos right by us here. Me, Congresswoman Kilpatrick, your leader, we stopped that. It would have cost 3,000 jobs here in Detroit. So when you talk about leadership and legislation, that's me.
Well, not...
I'll give you 15 seconds because you used
right.
part of your rebuttal earlier. Go right ahead.
Because the people who actually rate the Congress people on being a leader or a follower, actually GovTrax rates Ms. Kilpatrick as a follower, as opposed to Mr. Conyers, for example, as a leader. And what they do is they take the bills that they have authored and whether or not they can get co-sponsorship with their bills or not. That is just a fact.
15 seconds. I have 100% voting record conservation environment. have a 100% voting record, American Federation of Teachers, have a 100% voting record with the NAACP, and many other organizations. So yeah, I hope we won't go into slow doggery and just saying anything. This is an important time for our country. We've got to be serious about things that
All right, we're going to...
But we're talking about leadership. We're not talking about whether or
I'm
not
going to have to stop you there. We're going to move to the direct question round. Each panelist in this round will pose a select question to individual candidates who have 30 seconds to answer. Any candidate can rebut the answer, but no more than 2 rebuttals per question. And we'll start this time. First up, Rochelle Riley.
Thank you very much, Vicki. I have so many questions that my head is about to burst. But what I think I'll do is deal with an issue that I had not quite seen until I moved to Michigan a decade ago. So this question is for Congresswoman Cheeks Kilpatrick. Within the city of Detroit, insurance rates are 3 to 4 times higher than they are any place else in the entire state. It is the worst form of discrimination I've seen in 7 states that I've lived in and seen personally. And while there are things that, because of lines of delineation that you're responsible for an entire congressional district. The mayor of Detroit is responsible for Detroit. The state legislature is responsible for Michigan. But at some point, I would think that the elected officials as a group would get together to do something about that. So my question is, how can this be fixed, and what is there that you could possibly do as a congressional representative to bring
Insurance
attention?
for our state is strictly, in most states, a state responsibility. So that question lies with the state senators and state representatives who make that policy and who vote on those bills. We do meet periodically. The insurance commissioners, and some of us want a national insurance commissioner who would have some same things as it relates to some of the states. But the truth of the matter is, today, in the 50 states in America, the insurance commissioners are state responsibility appointed by governors. Congress doesn't at all weigh in on that. We are trying to get support to do something nationally, have not made that mark yet. Right now it's still state, and unfortunately it's criminal what's happening in the city of Detroit insurance rates.
30-second rebuttal, Mr. Brown.
If I'm elected your congressperson, I'm going to see my job a whole lot bigger than what I do in Washington. The person that is the congressperson from the 13th district should be a leader in our state, should be a leader in our city. And in fact, that would be my intent. And I believe the Congress lady has a responsibility to lead not only in Washington, but to lead back here in terms of the things that need to be done.
Rebuttal. All right. Chuck Stokes.
Thank you very much. Sort of like Rochelle, there's so many different questions to so many different candidates, but we want to make sure that we pass everything around. It has been referred to in one way or another, and I think it's probably only fair that we give the Congresswoman a chance to respond to it. A recent poll showed that your unfavorability numbers have increased, due largely to what has been referred to in those polls as family scandals. Is it fair to judge your reelection based upon association as opposed to just your record?
I'm running on my record, my 32 years of stellar leadership. Unfortunately, my son has had problems. I love my son, as most of you love your sons and daughters. Having said that, I'm running what I do, and that's what I want to be judged by. What I've done in my 32 years in the state and House. Beyond that, and that's a perfect question, thank you so much, I get that a lot. And all I say to all of that is, I will continue to represent, to continue to lead. I think if you go to the House of Representatives today, either Republican or Democrat, I'm in the top 20 of the leadership out of 435.
Rebuttal. I saw Mr. Broad's hand first, in all fairness. Mr. Broad.
The Congresswoman would like to be judged on her leadership. I think it's important to recognize that she's sponsored and had passed one bill, and that's to honor an out-of-state university. We also should recognize that that leadership basically in terms of returning monies. There's no needier place anywhere, no needier place than here, and yet she has 13 freshman congresspeople that have appropriated more money, and she's in the bottom 25% in terms of appropriation.
Mr. Plummer?
Yeah, to answer your question, Chuck, I think it is unfair for her to be judged by whatever happened with any of her children. And so I stand with her with that. I'm the father of 5 children. And I think that as a mother, she has a responsibility to her children. And I don't think that that should be in here. And I take personal offense to Mr. Hume in his innuendos toward the Congresswoman. But I do think that she does need to answer about her record. I do think that she does need to respond to that, but not, I agree with the Congresswoman that it's unfair.
Thank you. Lloyd.
This is to Mr. Broad. With the Obama administration passing the National Health Care Bill this year, if you're elected to Congress, how will you help continue to reduce costs and eliminate waste and mistakes in health care?
I think it's very, very important that we revisit the health care plan. I think it's been a tremendous achievement that, in fact, 30 million more Americans now have health insurance. I think it's tremendous that, in fact, we cannot be removed from our health insurance plan because of a pre-existing condition. And I think it's tremendous that our kids under 26 are still able to remain on that policy. But we do have to revisit that. And I would, when I go to Washington, in terms of how do we make sure that the costs are something that our kids are going to be able to pay for.
All right. One last rebuttal.
Yeah, I think that whenever you force somebody to do something, that's wrong. And to force people to get insurance, I think, is wrong. I think that the situation with the government controlling health the way that they are is going to step backwards, and they're going to decide too many things. And the other thing that I think is that just the main question is, can you force someone to have something, force them to have insurance? I think it's just unconstitutional. I think that's wrong.
All right. And one final, anyone?
I wanted to mention something from the last question that was posed to the Congresswoman. On opencongress.org, you're rated 8 from the bottom in all of Congress for what job you have done in the past.
I have to rebut. There are organizations all over this country who do a lot of different things. Ideology has a lot to do with what you do. I've just named 3 major national organizations who rate many at the top. There are hundreds of those. I'm sure you'll find others like you. I don't know that organization. Right? Maybe it's a Tea Party. Something.
They're nonpartisan.
I mean, but I don't.
Nonpartisan.
All I'm saying is, check my record. There's some people with us and some people against us. That's the American way, and we just have to go with that. But if you check it, I deliver.
They're nonpartisan. Go to it. Opencongress.org. They're nonpartisan. They rate everybody equally.
Right, I've been there.
Never heard of them.
Thank you very much, Vicki. Millionaire Matty Maroon has been passing a lot of money around to both Republicans and Democrats in his effort to build a private bridge between Detroit and Canada. Meanwhile, Michigan and Canada are jointly trying to build a new bridge owned by the people. Where do you stand on that issue?
I have not received any money from Mr. Maroon. I have not met with Mr. Maroon, although I did ask one of his representatives if I could sit down with him to understand his perspective, because I've met with the residents of the Downriver area. And I do understand that Canada, the federal government, the state of Michigan, and the residents are all in favor of DRIC, of the Detroit River International Crossing. And so I think that there is a middle ground that I think that both private and federal and Canada can come together. So I think there's still a deal that can be made, and Mr. Maroon could potentially be part of it, but I'm not in favor of him having his second bridge that he owns 100%.
All right. Rebuttal? Mr. Broad, beat the punch.
I think for sure we need the second bridge if we hope to compete in the economy going forward. I favor the DRIC. The Canadians have already said there's no way that they're going to allow the Matty Maroon to have another bridge. I've not spoken to Manny Maroon or taken any money from Manny Maroon. But this has the potential to create 10,000 new jobs, and we really need to get on with it in terms of continuing to just debate it. That Manny Maroon second bridge isn't going to happen. So let's get on with DRIC and make it happen. It's not only going to provide 10,000 construction jobs, but it's going to help to make sure that we attract businesses in the future.
Congresswoman.
Thank you very much. I funded the study DRIC, the international crossing that the study came out of. Federal dollars helped to do that. I was very much a part of that. I support the DRIC study, which says, yes, transportation is growing and we need two bridges. The question is not, should we do it? The question is, which way do we go? Do we go on public or do we help the private? Now, it's going to cost $2.5 billion to build the bridge. Canada has offered up $500 million. What I want to make sure is that U.S. owns the bridge, or at least it's part of the bridge. So the question is not, should it be done? Yes, it should be. The question is how and how much. Sitting on that committee where they come to get the funding, I know the kind of proposals that are getting funded. We've got to be solid. You've got to ask less money as possible from the federal government. So it's coming. We just don't know which one. That's the question. And I hate that it's this or that. It's not this or that who this. It's which proposal is best, which can come to the federal government to get the assistance. Federal government funds these projects 80% federal, 20% local money. So we've got to weigh all those things. And as a member of that transportation committee who has seen Puerto Rico come, who has no vote in Congress, and get our money because they bring better proposals. I'm for the best proposal that can get through our committee and get funded.
All right. That's it for that round.
Well, once again, we're dealing with a leadership question here. The Congresswoman has been out in front on this bridge issue. And I would like to ask the Congresswoman, how much has Matty Maroon donated to your campaign? Because you have been a supporter of Mr. Maroon's bridge. You have been a strong proponent of his position, and you have not provided leadership in terms of the DRIC. You just haven't.
I just said what I've done. It's got to come past me to get it, whatever we do.
But the question is,
all the records are
campaign?
public. All our donors are public. All our donors, feel free to look at all of ours. Letter of the law, we follow that. Whether it's going to be, I'm telling you, yes, the study has come back that we need one. Yes, I sit on the committee that's going to decide who gets it. Other countries, other states come all over there to get dollars. So, I mean, Mr. Plummer, you can check have you done your report yet? Have you done your report or paid your bankruptcy yet, since you're all in my stuff?
I'm asking.
Jesus. I mean, I don't even want to go there, but you all are taking this somewhere else and picking them not helping.
I'm asking a simple question. I think it's a fair question to ask. And
I've just answered it,
has Mr. Maroon donated to your campaign, and how much did he donate?
The records are open. Please check them. He donates to Republicans and Democrats all over the country.
I'm talking about you.
Check your record. Have you paid yours? Bankruptcy? Have you filed your report? They're all public. You're not in it.
First of all, someone else wanted to.
Wait a minute.
I've said here pretty good.
Did you have your hand up?
Pretty good.
We're going to cut that right there for a rebuttal, Mr. Broad.
In his defense, he had nothing to do with it.
There's a lot of discussion in terms of what's this going to cost taxpayers money in terms of having the DRIC. The Canadians have offered to pay the upfront costs, and the fares, there will be a bond issue, and the fares in terms of crossing the bridge will pay the expenses on the bridge in terms of also paying for the construction of the bridge. This is not a taxpayer-funded bridge.
Thank you.
All right. Let's move now to the rapid fire round. These are yes or no answers to the questions posed by the panel. And you can take maybe 10, 15 seconds if you need an explanation, but really yes or no, firm answer. And we'll start out with Chuck Stokes.
Can this go to any of them?
Any of them, right.
Okay. People oftentimes say they are sick and tired of bipartisanship and that they want Democrats and Republicans to work together more. I'm curious to know if any of you have or would seriously consider voting for someone of the opposite party.
Voted for some legislation or someone?
Someone.
All right, let's go down the line with Mr.
My answer is yes.
Absolutely. I don't think one party has all the answers to all the problems in this country, and I think you should vote both ways.
The best public policy is bipartisan. In the Congress, one party controls over the other, chairs the committees, decides for decisions if something comes up or not. I'm a Democrat. I support Democrats in that regard.
Mr. Hume?
Yes, I would vote for the other party.
Mr. Broad?
Yes, I would support the other party. I have worked with both Republicans and Democrats.
All right, and we'll move to Lloyd Jackson.
Arizona's immigration law, controversial to say the least. What is your take on that law? Many feel it is a form of racial profiling. Do you think that immigration is a role of the states or the feds?
I think it's a role of both, but as an African American, I find the Arizona law to be almost impossible to fairly handle.
All right, we'll
So
move
I have a
that
problem.
on.
I'm in favor of the law. Currently, right now, Arizona is going through massive financial upheaval. They're having to pay for hospital stays. They're having to pay for... Yes or no? I just said that. I'm in favor of it.
Reverend. Congresswoman.
First of all, immigration is a national issue. It's national that we do that. I've been on that Arizona border, and yes, we need to do something about it. I've watched...
The federal government's not doing their job.
We need to do.
Should.
Yes or no?
But we need to. We need to do our job. I'm the first to say yes, that we need to do that, and no, I don't support the Arizona law.
Next. Mr. Hume.
I support the law in Arizona, and I think what they're doing something that the federal government isn't doing. And it says right in the law not to racial profile, so that's not even part of it.
So why do you do it?
Mr. Broad.
Immigration is the responsibility of the federal government. We need leadership in Washington that, in fact, gets that tackled so we have a very good immigration law.
All right.
By the way, the reason why I said it's both is because we happen to be an international city. And so even though it is a federal issue, that's something that is paramount to us as well because we interface with an international community.
All right, Hugh Perkins.
You spoke about bipartisan cooperation. You may have to speak about tripartisan cooperation. The Tea Party has become a major movement in this country. Do you see that group as a source of patriotism or a source of division? Let's start with you.
It's both. I think a lot of people are taking it to the wrong level. I know a lot of folks don't want to have to pay more taxes for services, and I think it goes both ways.
I see the tone of the Tea Party as absolutely divisive, and because we in metropolitan Detroit are very familiar with polarization, very familiar with divisive type talk, I find the Tea Party talk to be quite divisive.
Congresswoman.
With the seriousness of the problems of our country, we need all three parties to work closer together. The Tea Party has come on board. We need to talk to them. We need to be at the table. I think that's the way this government has to work so that the people of this great country can be served better.
Do you believe they're divisive, though?
They are very definitely divisive. They do that first, but I don't think you throw them out. The way you change that is you bring them in and talk about that.
Mr. Hume. Mr. Hume.
Organizations like BAM is divisive. The Tea Parties are just some frustrated people that want to be heard. There's nothing wrong with them. There's nothing wrong with them at all.
All right. Mr. Broad.
I think that what's most important is that people have to talk to each other. And unfortunately, my experience with the Tea Party is they're more about shouting at people than they are about listening to the other side. And I think that's very unfortunate.
Yeah.
All right. Rochelle Riley.
Should BP be prevented from drilling anywhere in the world until they have completed an entire cleanup of the Gulf?
Let me say that about the energy policy that was passed by the former administration's White House and closed doors in Cheney's office. Right now, monitoring equipment can go half a mile under. When they passed that energy bill, they allowed them to go a mile under, which is why we're having the problems. They can't cap it. They don't have the science. They don't have the technology or the experts who can do that. That goes back to bipartisan legislation. The best legislation is bipartisan when the two of us work together. BP has some owning up to do. They're still not being truthful with the people of New Orleans and our country. And I think before we let them express that more, we've got to check them at the door.
But do you support...
Is that a yes or no?
Yeah, is that a yes or a no? Do you think they should be barred from drilling anymore until they've cleaned up the mess?
Yes.
Mr. Hume.
No, I don't. I think that what you've got to do is you've got to allow people to drill closer to shore and not force them to drill in a mile deep water. If they opened up more areas for drilling, you wouldn't have to go so deep. So that's the cause of it.
Mr. Broad?
I think there was, I think what we have to do is keep it in the context of jobs. I think BP made serious blunders, but the bigger blunders were made by our regulatory people in Washington. It is really important, if we're going to have offshore drilling, that the government do its job in terms of making sure that those wells are something that we won't have to experience this again. So BP, we're not in a position to be able to ban them from all over the world, but certainly we should be ready to put a stop on new drilling until we're sure that the government is caught up in terms of how they're going to regulate that.
Mr. Plummer?
If the question is, can they be banned, how far?
Oh, no, my question wasn't whether they could, because they can. My question was whether you believe they should, yes or no.
Until they clean up.
Until they clean up the spill in the Gulf.
No, I don't think they should be banned wherever they're drilling. I do, however, think that we are faced here in this area with the same potential concern that we have a foreign country, Canada, who does drilling in the Great Lakes. And can we stop them from drilling because of our concern, which I think is a legitimate question to ask now. How far can we go to stop Canada from drilling now to make sure that they do not pollute the Great Lakes? And so to just say across the board, yeah, they should be banned, I don't think it's that simple of an answer. I think it's a much more complex question.
All right. Mr. Brown?
I think absolutely they should be banned. Last year, they had over 489 violations for OSHA, as well as other problems with leakage and whatnot. Their closest competitor had 8. There's a big difference there. I feel they should be banned, and then I feel that the other competitor should come in and do the drilling.
All right. Chuck Stokes?
Vicki, can I ask?
Follow up?
No, I just want to ask one quick question to one candidate and then one that they can give a yes or no all to. Mr. Brown, do you currently live in the 13th Congressional District?
I do not. I'm in the 11th.
Okay. Why would you be running?
If you're a corporation and you're looking for somebody that can do the job, sometimes you go out of the state for that person. If you're, a city, a lot of times they bring in people that from out of state to do that. I'm living 10 miles away from the Detroit border. I've lived here most of my life.
All right. I could follow up, but I know that we're in the yes and no.
Go ahead.
The yes and no.
I don't mind.
We'll do that. I'll give we'll give your opponents a chance to be able to do that. Do you think that the current stimulus package is working? And if another round were offered, would you vote yes?
To the first question, no, it's not working apparently for us in metropolitan Detroit. Would I vote for round 2? Yes, I would. But what I would like to do is make sure that the president, who kind of controls that, the president understands that in the first round, he was using a phrase, bailing out Detroit. And Detroit wasn't bailed out. It was automobile industries or companies. And so in the second round, I think that there needs to be some qualifiers to that so that we can ensure that greater Detroit area gets its share of the bailout that he calls it.
Is that for all of them? Mr. Brown?
No, it's not working. I think if we do go and pass another stimulus bill, we need to look at it a little bit closer to make sure that the money is going to the right spots.
Congresswoman?
One major flaw of the stimulus bills, the monies went to the states. We fought that. We did not get enough votes to make it go from the federal government to local communities. That's a mistake, and I won't vote for another one until we do that. It's done some good. We've saved teachers' jobs. We've put a lot of money into retooling many of the communities around the country. So it's done some, but it's not a panacea. Will I vote for another one that has to have the right margins in it? If it can go directly from the federal government to the cities and villages and counties, maybe. If it has certain parameters about the most deprived communities and some rating on who would get this share and what kind of formula that would be, maybe. So I think the question is still out. I think nothing substitutes for that direct job hire that I talked about in CETA. People need to get back to work. All the other stuff, if you can spend $800 billion on TARP and another $700 on stimulus, you can put people back to work. That's what I want to see done.
All right, Mr. Hill.
This is the yes and no part, right? No. The reason is to give somebody money, you've got to take it from someone else. And are we going to take it from the children? Who are we taking this money from? People are being taxed enough. We got to quit free handouts.
Mr. Broad.
I would definitely support a second stimulus bill because it'll provide jobs, and that's what I want to happen here more than anything else. When our economy returns to the robustness that it had before, that's when we begin to balance our budgets. Let's go back to President Clinton. When President Clinton was in office, he had higher tax rates. We had a surplus that we had. We were all concerned, was that surplus going to be something that was going to cause severe problems? Wouldn't we like that again? We need to go back to that again. The stimulus was used to prop up our state government, but that's not true across the country. And what we need is leadership in Washington that makes sure that what happens to that stimulus money is for our best benefit. And I don't think that happened this last time.
All right, we're going to move on to Lloyd.
Vicki, please, I'm about to explode on this one.
We got to move on.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh.
This is a yes or no, but I probably will need a little explanation as well. As the president begins to bring home the U.S. troops from Iraq by the end of next year, will you have a plan to help these troops with resources as they come back to their families and begin to blend back into society?
I think, yes, obviously there needs to be a plan, but I do want to take the time to go back to the last question because that's very relevant to all that you're asking. The stimulus money, you're saying a plan, it's going to take money to do that. And so if there's a second stimulus, on the first watch, it was on the Congresswoman's watch. And so if the Congresswoman felt that it wasn't right, she should have cried foul. She should have stood up and
120 of us.
And you would have had the greater Detroit area behind you. But I'm not aware of you providing leadership in this area to rally the people here to cry out to the president, foul. I haven't heard it. And I'm sure that most people here haven't.
We'll move on to Mr. Brown, addressing the issue of the troops.
The issue with the troops, as the president begins to bring them home at the end of next year, will you have a plan if you are elected congressman? Will you have a plan to help these troops with resources as they come back to their families and begin to blend back into society?
Yeah, they're having a hard enough time as it is. I think that Congress has really dropped the ball at this one. And thousands and thousands of troops are coming back. They're getting PTSD, and they're not addressing that. When they come back, they're kind of just sweeping it under the rug. So I believe that we do need to expand money to the VA, absolutely, to make sure that we take care of them.
Yes, I believe as well. We passed the largest, most far extensive veterans bill 2 months ago ever since the first GI Bill. The second GI Bill is now there. We need to strengthen it. It's for education benefits, housing. It's to help them get retrained for various careers. Our veterans, and I've been in the field. I've been to Iraq and Kuwait, and I've been to Landstuhl to see the hospital where the wounded warriors go. They're some of the most dedicated, 18 to 25 years old, over 70% of them, in the field, protecting our rights. First order of the Constitution, protect the homeland and its citizens. They're doing that. So when they come home, whether they have the mental illness problems, looking for a job, or being just reunited with their families, we should be there to help them. And the new VA bill for the 21st century does much of that. I voted for it. I'm proud of it. And yes, it's a good first step to move forward.
All right. Mr. Hume?
I don't have an answer for this.
All right. Mr. Broad?
These are our heroes. These are the young men and women that have gone way beyond anything we could have ever asked them, and they've served dedicatedly. When they come back, we should do everything that we can to treat them as the heroes that they are.
All right. Next up, Will Perkins.
Well, the polls say that this is essentially a two-person race, and that one of the leaders is not here tonight. If indeed the polls prove to be true, would you withdraw from the race before Election Day? And if so, hypothetically, is there anyone on this panel to whom you would lend your support?
Hugh, I guess you probably know better than I do that many polls that have come out have been proven to be wrong on the day of election. Therefore, no, I won't pull out at all.
Absolutely not.
The polls show that there are 4 candidates in this room who collectively are attracting less than 10% of the vote, and that's why I asked that question.
It's pretty hard to get your name out there when you're fresh, you know.
You know, and polls don't vote, people do. I hope all of us will stay in and do the best we can to make our case. That's the American way.
I would consider dropping out of the race and loaning my support to somebody else, because the reason I got into this was because I wasn't happy with who we had in Washington.
Is there anyone that you would support if you
Right.
were on?
Yeah, I like an awful lot what I heard from Mr. Broad tonight.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And Mr. Broad, would you consider dropping out?
No, I would not. I believe I'm the most qualified person to lead this district, and I plan to stay there and fight for every vote that I can get. Someone earlier said you don't know how the vote's going to come out until the vote comes out. And so I'm going to be just going after every possible vote that I can get, because I think we're in a ditch as deep as any of I've ever seen, and I'm going to do everything I can to work to get us out of that ditch.
Rochelle Riley.
I think that endorsement just cost you the election.
President Barack Obama's approval and disapproval ratings go up and down, and they've been going down a little, and I want to ask each of you, yes or no, whether you think he's doing a good job.
I think in general, the president has done a good job. So in general, I'd say yes.
Yeah, he has. For what he was dealt, we were at one of the most tough times.
Yes,
in
he
our
has.
country's history.
I agree too. Health care, autos, all the things that we've done. We haven't seen this kind of legislation from other leaders. He's done great. If he were a different man, everyone would be saying so.
Mr. Hume.
I don't know, making a health care bill that nobody even read and then they voted on. That's pretty bad.
All right, Mr. Broad.
I think President Obama is doing a terrific job. He's inspiring us to be better than we can be. He's led, first and foremost, financial reform, which caused many of the problems that we're in today with home foreclosures, people out of work. He's gotten a health care bill through, and he continues to try with everything he's got to work across the aisle so that we can all come together and get some things done.
He actually inspired me to get into this race.
Pardon me?
He actually inspired me to get into this race.
All right. Okay, we're done with the rapid fire round. We are now going to move to our closing statements. Each candidate will have 30 seconds to tell the voters why they should vote for you. And starting first with Mr. Glenn Plummer.
During this campaign, I'm the only one that's talked about bringing together the congressional leadership in terms of a formal caucus to take an 8-fold cord, if you will, and have a united front in Washington, D.C. We also need a national industrial policy to rebuild manufacturing. We must commit ourselves to increasing new industries in this area, which I'm committed to leading and making happen. And I also think, finally, that the church community needs to be engaged and partnered with the federal government to bring about a rebuilding. It's happened. That's how we got hospitals, and that's how we got schools. They came out of the church relationship. And so I really think that I will provide that leadership, and I hope that you'll give me a chance to do that.
All right. Mr. Brown.
Coupled with the bridge and the wind and solar technologies that I am promoting, that should bring roughly 30,000 jobs to the district, jobs that are desperately, desperately needed right now. If jobs is your number one issue, vote for me.
This is a very serious time for our country. We need the best that we can get to send to fight for you. I am that person. The seniority, the respect, the delivering of the dollars and the services that I've done over this 14 years in the Congress makes me best suited to help our country at this difficult time. Not to be knee-jerk, not to talk about each of our, I think we've been stellar, -1 up here. The others of us were serious candidates. You have to decide what is best for your family and best for America. If you check the record, I believe you'll send me back to Congress. Thank you.
Mr. Hume.
When I undertook this project, I went around and gathered the signatures myself. I got over enough to qualify that I personally circulated.
So did
I talked to people, and I asked them what they wanted, and I looked at the other candidates, and I noticed that Carolyn Cheeks didn't circulate any of her own petitions. I noticed that Hanson Clark has himself and his wife. That was it. And I think I did better than any other candidate as far as circulating and coming in contact with the people. I just want to go to Washington, come back, and resume my life. I don't want to be a career politician.
All right, Mr. Broad.
This election's about change. This election is about change. Our Congresswoman is surpassed by 13 freshman congressmen. I want to be the 14th. Hanson Clark, who's not even here tonight, is run for just about every political office that there is in the state. And yet, can any of you name one particular accomplishment of Hanson Clark? I want to be your congressperson. Please vote for me.
All right. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank each and every one of the candidates for joining us tonight, starting first with Mr. Glenn Plummer.
Thank you, Vicki.
Mr. Vincent Brown, Congresswoman Carolyn Cheeks Kilpatrick.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Vicki.
Mr. Stephen Hume, and Mr. John Broad. I don't know, he laughs at booze. That's pretty interesting. Okay, let's give them another round of applause collectively.